Australia versus Florida. The climate, wildlife, and lifestyle shock for American retirees. There are 80,000 Americans retiring in Florida this year. But here's what travel agencies won't tell you. An increasing number are actually moving to Australia instead, and many of them regret coming back. Now, you might be thinking, okay, so some people are moving to Australia. What's the big deal? But here's where it gets wild. The real reason they're leaving Florida has nothing to do with what you think. But wait, before we begin, please subscribe to ensure that you never miss out on any of my essential stuff. Comment, I subscribe below, and I will personally welcome you to our community. With that said, let's get started. Let me tell you about Robert. He's 67, retired accountant from Ohio. Back in 2019, he made the move that seemed obvious to everyone, Miami. No state income tax. Beaches everywhere. Sunshine year-round. What could go wrong? 2 years in, Robert was barely sleeping. His knees felt like hot knives after every step. His arthritis was flaring up constantly. And during hurricane season, forget about it. He was paying $15,000 a year in hurricane insurance alone. $15,000. Here's the thing nobody tells you. Florida's humidity averages 74%. That constant, suffocating moisture, it aggravates arthritis flare-ups by 23%, according to research published in the Journal of Rheumatology in 2022. And the heat index? It regularly hits 105 degrees in the summer months. Robert thought he was escaping winter. He wasn't escaping anything. He was just trading one set of problems for a different set. But here's the thing. Florida's real shock? It's not actually the weather. Americans expect alligators in Florida. They prepare for that. What they don't prepare for, what nobody prepares for, is what swims beneath the surface. Meet Margaret. She's 71, retired teacher from Connecticut. She loves swimming. Every single day in the ocean, soaking up that Florida lifestyle she'd been dreaming about. 6 months in, she went swimming after a light rainfall. Nothing unusual, just a quick dip. Within 48 hours, her legs swelled up like a balloon. We're talking grotesque swelling. She got hospitalized for 2 weeks. The diagnosis? Vibrio infection. Here's what her doctor told her. It's not just sharks, Margaret. Warm water in Florida now carries bacteria that didn't even exist 10 years ago. And the numbers back this up. Vibrio bacteria infections have jumped 89% in Florida since 2010. That's according to a CDC report from 2023. And we know why. The saltwater temperature has increased 1.2 degrees Celsius in the past decade. That might not sound like much, but for bacteria, it's a breeding ground. Margaret couldn't walk for 3 weeks. She spent her perfect retirement on painkillers and antibiotics in a hospital room. Meanwhile, compare this to Australian coastal waters. Cooler temperatures. We're talking 15 to 22 degrees Celsius, mean significantly lower bacterial loads. Not zero, but lower. If you're determined to stay in Florida and love swimming, stick to freshwater pools. Chlorinated community centers. Avoid open salt water from June onward. It's not romantic, but it's safe. But here's the thing. When Margaret looked into moving to Australia, she discovered Australia has its own hidden costs that nobody talks about. Australia sounds like paradise, until you see the Medicare costs and visa restrictions. David and Susan are both 69. They're a retired couple from California. They took a 6-week vacation to Sydney in 2021, loved it, and thought, why not? Let's move. So they did. Here's where the dream started cracking. Australian healthcare for non-permanent residents is wildly expensive. David and Susan were paying $8,500 a year for private health insurance alone. Not a supplement. Just private coverage because they weren't permanent residents. And there's a 28% Medicare gap. Costs that the government doesn't cover. Specialists, prescriptions, dental, that all comes out of pocket. They paid $40,000 just to stay there legally for 3 years. Let's break down the actual numbers, because this is where the Australia fantasy gets expensive real fast. American retirees on Medicare pay about $164 a month for basic coverage. Add in prescriptions, and you're looking at maybe $8,000 a year total for healthcare in the United States. In Australia, if you're not a permanent resident, you're spending $6,500 to $12,000 a year just on health insurance. That's according to the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare from 2023. Their retirement savings suddenly felt a lot smaller, and they hadn't even factored in visa extension fees, which run about $800 a year, plus legal costs to navigate the immigration system. Now here's the thing. You might be thinking, okay, so Australia's expensive. What's the advantage? And that's when the story gets interesting. Cost isn't the only shock. It's how differently retirement actually feels in each place. And this is where most retirement advice gets it completely wrong. Stepping outside in Florida feels like entering a sauna. Your clothes stick to you immediately. You shuffle to an air-conditioned car. You shuffle into an air-conditioned building. Your entire day becomes about escaping the heat. Stepping outside in Australia, especially on the coast, feels like waking up. There's usually a breeze. The sun is strong, but it's not suffocating. You can actually be outside without feeling like you're melting. That might sound like a small thing, but it changes everything about how you experience your day. Here's another difference. Social life. In Florida, you've got active adult communities where everyone is 55 and older, golf communities, age-segregated neighborhoods. On the surface, it sounds great. You're around people in your life stage. But here's what the research shows. Social isolation in age-segregated communities actually increases depression risk by 31%. That's from the American Journal of Epidemiology, 2023. In Australia, you're usually in mixed-age neighborhoods. Your neighbors might be 40-year-old families, 20-something professionals. It's intergenerational. Let me tell you about Helen. She's 73, widow from Texas. She tried Florida for 6 months. She was surrounded by people her age, but here's what she told me. I felt alone. I really did. Then she moved to Brisbane, Australia. Different neighbors, younger neighbors, but her actual social life completely transformed. In Australia, she said, my neighbors are 40-year-old families, but I've never felt more connected. Mixed-age communities show higher life satisfaction scores. That's from the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare. It turns out being around people in different life stages actually makes you feel less alone, not more. If you're set on Florida, don't fall into the age-gated trap. Join intergenerational volunteer groups, Habitat for Humanity, local nonprofits, anything that mixes you in with people of different ages. Seriously, if you're considering Australia, expect a 6 to 12-month cultural adjustment period. Budget for community integration activities. You'll feel like an outsider at first. That's normal. Stick it out. But here's what really separates these two places when it comes to the day-to-day experience. Everyone worries about crocodiles in Australia, snakes, spiders, all the deadly creatures that supposedly want to kill you. And yes, those things are real. But here's the thing. Australians have a system, a culture of wildlife safety. You learn it. You respect it. Life goes on. Florida, the wildlife situation is quietly spiraling, and nobody's really talking about it. There are an estimated 300,000 Burmese pythons in the Everglades right now. Not an exaggeration. That's the estimate from Florida Fish and Wildlife in 2023. A retiree named James, he's a marine biologist turned retiree, told me this. I found a python coiled under my pool equipment. Nobody told me to check for that. Lionfish are invading Gulf waters. Sea urchin populations have collapsed. The entire ecosystem is destabilizing. Saltwater crocodiles, species that were never supposed to be in the Gulf of Mexico, have been spotted there because of climate migration. The ecosystem James studied 30 years ago, completely unrecognizable now. Australia's wildlife situation is stable by comparison. Sure, you got redback spiders and box jellyfish, but here's the difference. Australians know about them. There's education. There are systems in place. Box jellyfish season runs from May to October. Highly predictable. Lifeguards know it. They post warnings. Locals wear stinger suits. In Florida, Vibrio season is now 8+ months long and increasingly unpredictable. Nobody knows when your saltwater is going to be dangerous. If you're a Florida retiree and you love being outdoors, join local ecological restoration groups, Audubon Society, local parks departments. Learn wildlife safety. Understand what's actually happening in your environment. Don't ignore it. If you're an Australia retiree, take the mandatory wildlife awareness courses. They're free or low cost. Seriously, do them. But here's the real plot twist. It's not about the animals or the cost at all. It's something way more important that nobody sees coming. Both locations promise the retirement dream. But the mental health data tells a completely different story than what the Instagram posts suggest. Patricia is 72, retired nurse from Massachusetts. She moved to Miami for endless sunshine, because that's what retirement is supposed to be, right? Endless sunshine equals endless happiness. After 1 year, she had a depression diagnosis, not situational sadness, clinical depression. Here's the paradox. Despite all that sunshine, depression rates are surprisingly high in Florida. The University of Miami published research on this in 2022. The reason? It's not about the weather. It's about the social structure. It's artificial. It's surface level. Everyone's supposedly happy on the surface. Nobody talks about Patricia started sleeping 12 hours a day. The sunshine felt like a lie. Meanwhile, in Australian coastal communities, depression rates in people 65 and older are 19% lower. That's according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, 2023. Why? The research suggests it's because of mixed age integration, an outdoor lifestyle with moderate climate, and stronger community rituals. People aren't isolated by age. They're integrated into actual society. This is crucial information because mental health is what determines whether a retirement move is actually successful or not. You can have the perfect weather and perfect cost of living, but if you're depressed, none of it matters. If you're a Florida retiree, prioritize mixed-age volunteer work. Therapy. Get out in the morning before the heat sets in and establish a routine. Don't assume endless sunshine will cure loneliness. If you're an Australia retiree, prepare for potential seasonal affective patterns during the winter, June, July, August. Plan travel or indoor activities in advance. Don't get blindsided by seasonal mood shifts like Patricia did in Florida. Here's the question you need to ask yourself. Are you running towards something? Or are you running away from something? Because the answer to that question determines everything. Let's ignore the tax benefits for a second and look at the actual total cost. These numbers are shocking because they're basically identical. Imagine you're a retiree with $50,000 a year in retirement income. Let's look at your actual 5-year cost. In Florida, state income tax, $0. That's the big selling point, right? No state income tax. But property insurance? That's $15,000 a year because of hurricanes. Healthcare, Medicare plus a supplement, $8,000 a year. Cost of living, $3,500 a month average. Over 5 years, that's $210,000 total, $283,000. In Australia, state income tax, $0, depending on your visa status. Private health insurance, $8,000 a year. Visa extension fees, $800 a year average. Cost of living, $4,000 a month. Over 5 years, that's $240,000 total, $280,000. They're basically the same cost. So, why do most retirees feel more financially secure in Australia? Here's the plot twist. It's not about the total cost. It's about predictability. In Florida, you might budget $40,000 a year. Then Hurricane Milton hits. Insurance jumps to $21,000. Now you're stressed. You can't sleep. You're second-guessing your finances. That's Tom's story. He's 70, retired engineer from Louisiana. Australia's costs are 94% consistent year to year. That's from the Australian Bureau of Statistics, 2023. Your insurance doesn't spike randomly. Your healthcare costs stay relatively stable. You can actually plan. And here's the psychological piece that most financial advisors ignore. When your costs are predictable, your financial decision-making improves by 28%. That's from the Journal of Economic Behavior and Organization, 2023. You make better choices. You sleep better. You feel more secure, even if the absolute dollar amount is the same. If you're a Florida retiree, invest in a non-negotiable hurricane emergency fund of at least $25,000. Secure long-term insurance locks. Monitor climate relocation programs. Don't assume things will stay stable. If you're an Australia retiree, budget for 10 to 15% higher upfront costs for visa setup, healthcare enrollment, and moving fees. Plan for a 3 to 5 year commitment before you truly evaluate whether long-term relocation makes sense. But here's what might surprise you most about where retirement is actually heading in 2024. In 2024, a completely different group of retirees is emerging. They're rejecting both choices entirely. Some retirees are now rotating between multiple locations, or they're moving to completely different countries that nobody talks about. Portugal, Costa Rica, Mexico, places that offer tax benefits, lower costs, and stable communities. Carol and Jim are both 68, retired couple from Arizona. They explored Florida for 6 months. They explored Australia for 8 months. Unsatisfied with both. You know what they're doing now? They split their time between Portugal for 4 months a year and Arizona for 8 months. Portugal costs $2,000 to $2,800 a month. They've got a visa that lets them stay indefinitely. Healthcare is affordable. The community is welcoming to international retirees. And here's the kicker. They feel like they finally found a retirement they actually wanted. Carol told me, why choose one prison when you can choose freedom? That's the emerging trend. Remote retirement. Choice. Flexibility. According to the AARP International Study from 2024, 34% of U.S. retirees are now exploring multiple countries. 50% consider themselves potential digital nomads in retirement, even if they're not technically working.